The training deck of the Galactic Council resembled a cathedral of polished metal and artificial gravity, its ceiling arching high above a field of moving platforms and shifting holographic hazards. Representatives of half the known species watched from tiered balconies as recruits attempted the coordination gauntlet, an obstacle course designed by species who prided themselves on flawless synchronization. Most participants moved with elegant precision. The Illyrians glided like dancers, the Threnni twisted through shimmering barriers as if their bones were liquid. And then there were the humans. Sergeant Orion Hale stood beside the entrance ramp, arms folded, watching two Terran volunteers attempt the balance spires. One slipped almost immediately, windmilled wildly, and fell face-first into the projection field. The crowd erupted in amused clicks, growls, and trills, universal laughter. A Zyranth officer lounging in the front row tilted his chitan-plated head. "Your species remains structurally disappointing," he said in accented basic. "Does your nervous system lack internal stability?" Orion didn't bother turning. "We fall down. We get up. It's a thing we do." The officer replied, mandibles tapping with smug energy. "I suppose gravity is not your friend. And arrogance isn't yours," Orion muttered. Above them, the course reset. Platforms retracted, beams shifted, and another pair of humans prepared to run. Orion exhaled slowly. He wasn't embarrassed for them, they were young, fresh, and still adjusting to alien design challenges, but the constant mockery grated. Humans were new members of the council, and the reception had been less than warm. A familiar voice approached from behind. "Sergeant Hale." Orion turned to see Laren, a tall Illyrian liaison draped in silver armor that seemed to flow with her movements. Her crystalline eyes flicked across the course. "Your delegation asked for your presence. They want your assessment." "Of what?" he asked. She gestured to the course. "This. The continued failure rate concerns them." Orion huffed. Human motor control wasn't designed by ballet instructors or hive-minded telepaths. "We're built for improvisation. The council doesn't care about that, they care about grace." Laren studied him. "You appear frustrated. Just tired of being the galaxy's punchline." Orion kept his voice low. "Every species here thinks we're clumsy brutes." "Are you not?" she asked without malice, simply curiosity. Orion answered with a faint smile. "Give us a battlefield instead of a dance floor. You'd see the difference." Before she could respond, a ripple of attention spread across the balconies. A shadow descended from an upper walkway, tall, armored in shimmering obsidian plates, moving with rigid purpose. Vraxtel Ka. Commander of the Zyranth Dominion elite phalanx. Even among high-ranking officials, he carried a reputation for cold intelligence and tactical brilliance. The gathered spectators stiffened as he approached the railing overlooking the course. His facetted eyes scanned the humans below, unreadable. Laren whispered, "Why would he attend a training review?" "No idea," Orion said. "But it's never good when predators watch livestock." Vrax spoke without preamble, voice resonant like vibrating glass. "Humans. Your movements are curious." Orion stepped forward. "Sergeant Orion Hale, Terran Joint Command." Vrax's gaze shifted to him, as if evaluating structural integrity. "Your species struggles with simplest coordination. How do you expect to survive frontline conflict?" "We manage," Orion replied. Vrax tilted his head. "I see only instability." "You see what you expect." A low hum vibrated through the deck, Zyranth amusement. Vrax pressed a segmented hand to the railing. "Your biology is inefficient. Your reflexes crude. Your balance," he gestured toward a human slipping again. "Unreliable. I question why the council admitted you at all." Orion held his stare. "Ask them." "But I am asking you." "Because we adapt. And because sometimes messy instincts beat perfect patterns." Vrax's mandibles twitched, perhaps the Zyranth equivalent of a smirk. "A comforting myth." A chime broke the moment. Admiral Straith of the Council Security Division appeared on a balcony, 4 arms clasped behind her back. "Representatives, the Karen 7 defense assignments are ready." She scanned the crowd and spotted Orion. "Sergeant Hale." "Your orders." Orion stepped away from Vrax, grateful for the interruption. Strather's holopad projected a star map of the Orion arm. A red marker blinked above a cold, distant world. Karen 7? Orion asked. Frozen outpost. Low population. Why send me there? Strather's mandibles fluttered sharply. Because the Council believes humans require simpler posts. Less precision. Of course they do, Orion thought. It's a surveillance assignment, she continued. Mild storms. Occasional pirate activity. Routine monitoring. Your transport leaves in 1 hour. Orion saluted. Understood. As he turned to leave, Vrax's voice followed him. A suitable placement for one of your, build. Safe. Inconsequential. Orion didn't look back. I've never enjoyed safe posts anyway. Laren caught up to him as he exited the training deck. You do not seem pleased. Would you be? Orion asked. I do not experience emotions the same way, but I understand the disappointment. Orion stopped at a viewport overlooking the curve of the Council's central station. Beyond it, the stars glimmered against black. He could almost feel Karen 7's cold reaching for him through the glass. Laren, he said quietly, humans aren't perfect. But we're not useless either. The Council doesn't see that. They will, she replied. Given time. Time's one thing we never have enough of. A priority alert pulsed through the corridor, spilling red light across the walls. Officers and envoys stopped mid-stride as consoles blinked with synchronized warnings. Laren tapped her unscheduled reading. Sector 9, Karen 7 region. Orion's heartbeat tightened. What reading? She stiffened. Mass displacement. Large hull signatures. Multiple. Ships. Warships. Orion stepped toward the nearest alert panel. Zyranth. Laren swallowed, her crystalline eyes dimming. Not confirmed, but probable. Orion exhaled slowly. Of course. The one planet they think I can't screw up. Sergeant, she said, voice tight, your transport leaves in 30 minutes. He nodded. Then I'd better move. Laren caught his arm. Orion. Be careful. He managed a small smile. Humans are clumsy, remember? We're good at falling, and landing where we're needed. The station shook as another wave of alerts rippled through the corridor. Karen 7 was no longer routine. It was a battlefield waiting to ignite. Karen 7 greeted Orion with a wind that felt like a blade. The shuttle's ramp dropped, and the frozen air rolled in, sharp and clean, carrying the faint scent of iron and distant ozone. Snow whipped across the landing zone in thin spirals, dragged by relentless gusts pouring down from the jagged ridgelines. The outpost stood half-buried in ice, metal ribs jutting from the white landscape like the remains of an ancient creature. Only a few antennae and sensor arrays pierced the storm, all coated in frost that shimmered under the low, violet sun. A bundled figure hurried toward him, boots crunching in the snow. Sergeant Hale. The voice came through a face mask and comm unit. Commander Rylis, Karen 7 Defense. Orion saluted. Reporting for assignment. Rylis's large amber eyes, common among the insectoid Varuan, blinked quickly. We didn't expect your arrival so soon. Your message said you were redirected. Threat indicators from the Council, Orion answered. I'm told you have unusual readings. Rylis nodded toward the ridge behind the outpost. They began an hour before you landed. Heavy displacement in orbit, then intermittent signals. Our equipment is struggling, storms interfere with half-hour arrays. That's what happens on a planet that hates telepaths. Orion followed her through the hatch into the main chamber, shaking snow from his coat. The interior felt cramped but warm, filled with blinking consoles and muffled chatter as crew worked through diagnostics. Rylis pulled up a holographic projection. We tried to identify the signatures, but the interference corrupts everything. We know only one thing, they're not merchants. Then we prepare for the worst. Orion scanned the displays. Where's your reconnaissance team? Still out. They haven't checked in. He frowned. How overdue? 40 minutes. Orion slung his rifle case off his shoulder. Send their last coordinates to my visor. I'll head out. Rylus twitched her antennae in alarm. Alone? That's reckless. Reckless is leaving them without support. I'll move faster by myself. She hesitated, then keyed in the data. Sergeant, be careful. This storm is unpredictable. Orion lifted his mask. Unpredictable is where we perform best. The outside world swallowed him whole. Wind carved horizontal lines across the air. The sky had dissolved into a swirling white void, broken only by the faint outline of mountains pressing against the horizon. Orion's visor flared with targeting pings and compass readouts as he trekked into the blizzard. The coordinates led him to a narrow ravine cutting between two jagged ridges. Frosted rock walls rose like frozen jaws on either side. Snowdrifts piled in uneven waves across the ground, and visibility dropped to a few meters. Orion crouched, examining the faint pattern of footprints. They ended abruptly at the edge of a deep indentation. The snow was churned, blown apart by force boots, claws, and something heavier. He touched the ice. Still warm from friction. Recent. A sound broke through the wind, a faint static pulse. Orion froze. Not static. A distortion wave, Zyranth tech. He slowly unslung his rifle, easing it onto a rock outcrop. His fingers found the familiar contours of the weapon, each part as known to him as the lines on his own hands. A shadow moved at the ridge above. He steadied his breath. Another shadow slid behind it. Then another. Their movements were too smooth, too synchronized, an unnatural rhythm that matched the rumors he'd heard for years. Zyranth phalanx. Orion adjusted the scope. Snow peppered the lens, but the shapes sharpened under thermal overlay. Sleek insectoid bodies, armor plates folded tight, limbs poised with perfect symmetry. They spread across the ledge like a single organism. His visor flashed a warning, enemy pattern lock detected. They were mapping the terrain. He keyed a whisper on his comm Rylus, I've located your recon team. Bad news. Static crackled, barely audible. What did you? Zyranth incursion. Confirmed. Rylus's voice shook. The council will need. No time. Orion settled into prone position. They're advancing. A Zyranth scout stepped forward, raising a sensor pole. Its antennae glowed blue as it swept the area. Orion knew the rhythm, he'd studied their technology. Telepathic grid mapping. Designed for perfect formation alignment. Two bad storms here ripped telepathy to shreds. But even half-functioning, they were dangerous. He exhaled once, slow. Wind direction, left to right. Gust speed, erratic but predictable enough. Distance, 1.3 kilometers. He steadied the trigger. Let's see how perfect you are without your hive, he murmured. His shot cracked through the storm. The sound vanished almost instantly, swallowed by the wind. Through the scope, he watched the scout crumple. The formation jerked, reacting with rigid precision. They turned toward the direction of the shot, spreading into a fan pattern. Orion fired again before they finished adjusting. Two fell. The rest shifted in calculated arcs. He fired a third time and everything broke. A massive pulse slammed into the mountainside behind him, showering ice and rock fragments across the ravine. Zyranth heavy support weapons lit the ridge with streaks of blue energy. Orion rolled behind a boulder as snow exploded where he'd been lying. Outpost, he shouted over comm static. Your recon team's down. Enemy is confirmed and advancing fast. Rylus's voice cracked. We'll prepare defenses. Do that. He peeked over the rock. I'm going to slow them. He swapped to a thermal grenade, pulled the pin, and lobbed it up the slope. The explosion cut through the storm, a blast of heat rolling down like a wave. Several figures tumbled from the ridge. The rest adapted instantly, descending in a calculated zigzag. They weren't confused. They were analyzing him. He didn't wait. He sprinted down the ravine, boots punching into deep snow. Energy bolts hissed past, cutting glowing lines through the blizzard. He slid behind a ridge of ice and pivoted his rifle upward, firing blind at approaching heat signatures. A shrill mechanical screech echoed from above as a larger form unfolded from the rock, an armored Zyranth officer, plates flaring with iridescent sheen. He recognized the silhouette. Commander class. Orion steadied his breath, adjusting the scope again. Storm winds tore at his mask, biting at exposed skin. "Show me your pattern," he whispered. The officer raised a weapon, charging a blast. Orion fired first. The shot punched through the alien's ocular plate. The officer staggered, fell, and tumbled into the abyss. Silence swept the ravine, broken only by the storm's roar. Orion reloaded, breath steadying. He scanned for movement. Nothing. They'd pulled back. He keyed his comm outpost. "This is Hale. Enemy recon neutralized. They know we're here." Rylis answered, breathless. "We're fortifying now." "How close were they?" "Too close." "And the main fleet?" Orion looked at the sky. Buried in the storm, blue shadows drifted behind the cloud layers, massive hulls, waiting. "Incoming," he said quietly. "And they're not scouting anymore." The wind howled, pushing cold through every seam of his armor. The invasion had begun. Orin felt the weight of Rowan's orders long after the briefing chamber emptied. The station's recycled air always carried a faint metallic taste, but tonight it seemed sharper, as if the station itself anticipated what was coming. The Galactic Council's convocation platform, where mockery had turned into something far more dangerous, would soon host an assassination attempt, and he was the only one capable of intercepting it before anyone realized a shot had even been fired. He walked the dim access corridor toward the observation deck, boots echoing softly. Rows of embedded lights cast narrow strips of pale glow along the floor. Every sound felt magnified, distant clangs of coolant pipes, the hum of power conduits, the occasional hiss of atmospheric regulators cycling. These tiny details steadied him. They were the constants of any engineered structure, regardless of species. He trusted them more than he trusted most diplomats. Sarah intercepted him at the lift. She still wore her uniform from the Council Security Force, the silver stripes along her sleeves catching the lift's overhead lights. "You're quiet," she said, stepping inside with him. "I'm thinking," Orin replied. "That usually means trouble. I didn't realize you were assigned tonight. Rowan asked me to keep you from doing anything heroic and stupid." She folded her arms. "I'm assuming I'm already failing." Orin managed a thin smile. "Only heroic. I'm saving the stupid part for later." The lift opened to a wind of colder air. The observation deck stretched out in a half-moon arc over the council chamber several stories below. Panoramic glass offered a full view of the floating platforms, the translucent bridges between species delegations, and the central dais ringed with light. Technicians hovered near consoles, adjusting lighting angles and recalibrating environmental projectors. The council ceremony would begin in less than 2 hours. Orin scanned the overhead lattice where structural beams interlocked in a complex pattern of crossbars, shadows, and sensor clusters. "That's where I'll be," he said. Sarah followed his gaze. "You already picked a perch." "Picked?" "No. It's the only one that gives a clear view of every delegation." He pointed along the ceiling architecture. "Those beams curve around the chamber's acoustic dampeners. From that angle, I can track all 182 potential firing lines." Sarah's tone softened. "You've done this kind of work too long. Someone should have. Someone had to represent what humans could really do." Her expression held a mixture of sympathy and uneasiness. "You really think the shot is coming tonight?" "I think," he said, adjusting his focus with deliberate calm, "that we're dealing with people who laughed at humans because they believed we lacked coordination, discipline, and precision. They think we're unpredictable. But the idea they fear most is that we're predictable in the one way that matters: we finish what we start." Sarah stepped closer. "And what is it you've started?" "Protecting Earth's seat before anyone else gets to decide whether we deserve to keep it." They held each other's gaze for a moment, long enough to acknowledge the tension between duty and something they had never quite named, before Sarah exhaled sharply. "Fine. I'll back you. But if Rowan asks, I tried to talk you out of everything." Orin smirked. "I'll confirm that you failed." The security team cleared the deck, leaving only Orin and the equipment crate containing his long-range rifle. It wasn't the largest sniper weapon in the galaxy, nor the newest, nor the most decorated. But humans didn't need exotic technology, they needed reliability. Orin slid open the crate and assembled the rifle with a familiarity that bordered on ritual. Each component clicked together with practiced precision. The metal carried a cool, even temperature, and the internal coils hummed faintly as the power core activated. He locked the ocular scope into place, calibrating zero drift. Everything responded perfectly. He slung the rifle across his back and climbed the maintenance ladder toward the upper beams. The chamber grew larger as he ascended, the murmurs of council staff fading into the faint drone of deep space engines resonating through the station's hull. At the top, he crouched on a narrow support beam. From here, the entire council chamber unfurled beneath him like a luminous mosaic. Delegations were gathering in their tiered seating arrangements. The insectoid trillax clattered their mandibles in conversation. The scaled acrothi glimmered emerald and gold under the light arrays. The air itself shimmered from the floating atmospheric domes used by species who breathed something other than oxygen. Orin steadied himself, anchored his rifle, and scanned. Movement patterns. Behavioral anomalies. Heat signatures. He filtered out thousands of harmless signals, twitchy claws, swaying antennae, drifting fog spheres, language bursts, holographic documents flickering midair. He adjusted magnification, swinging from platform to platform. Nothing yet. From below, Rowan's voice crackled over the private channel. Status? Watching, Orin murmured. Any sign of the contractor? Not yet. Intel says they were hired by a coalition that wants Earth out of the Council. Permanent removal. I'm aware. A brief silence. Then Rowan added quietly, don't let this turn into another new caldera. Orin stiffened. This isn't that. It could be. It won't be. He cut the transmission before Rowan could push further. He continued sweeping his scope. And then, something unusual. On the far edge of the chamber, near the crystalline viewing alcoves, a figure moved against the flow of the surrounding crowd. Their gait was precise, almost too measured. They wore standard diplomatic fabric, but the seams bulged slightly at the ribs, as if concealing modular components. Orin centered the crosshair on the figure's hands. They carried nothing. But their posture told another story. Sarah, Orin whispered into the comm East Quadrant, platform C-19. One individual walking counterflow. On it. She appeared seconds later on his HUD overlay, approaching casually yet with undeniable purpose. Her eyes tracked the suspect without turning her head. Do you see a weapon? She murmured. No. Then what makes you think? The suspect's hand twitched, so subtle that a normal observer would have missed it. A brief pulse ran along the fabric, passing between hidden implants. Orin's breath went cold. Sarah, he said, step back. Now. Orin, what? Do it. She obeyed, slipping behind a column. The suspect paused at the platform edge. Their fingers brushed a nearly invisible control node, and a thin ripple distorted the space around the palm, an optical displacement no civilian technology could generate. A phase coil projector, Orin muttered. Compact. Illicit. Lethal. He steadied his grip. Down below, the council speaker approached the dais. Delegations quieted. The assassin raised their hand toward the stage. Orin tightened the trigger, exhaled once, and fired. The rifle released a muted pulse, almost like a whisper. The bolt traveled cleanly through the phase shift, struck the implant cluster, and detonated the covert power cell. Light flared. The assassin collapsed before they could complete the firing sequence. Shouts erupted across the chamber. Security forces swarmed. Orin lowered the rifle but did not move. He watched Sarah rush toward the fallen figure. He watched Rowan barking orders. He watched the panicked ripple move through hundreds of species, those who had laughed at humans now staring upward, uncertain where the shot had come from or how it had been so precise. For the first time since the council had been established, silence fell not from unity but from awe. Orin closed the scope. This, he whispered to himself, is why they should never have mocked us. If you'd like, I can begin chapter 4 in 1,000 words with the same precision, voice, and momentum. The aftermath carried a gravity that pressed into every corner of the council chamber. Even after security swept the platforms and sealed every exit, a brittle tension lingered in the air like the silence after thunder when everyone waits to learn what the lightning has struck. Orin remained on the upper beams, rifle slung across his back, watching the scene unfold with measured control. He felt no satisfaction. Only readiness. Sarah stood near the fallen assassin, now restrained by magnetic cuffs and surrounded by medtech drones. The suspect's clothing had burned away around the chest, leaving exposed circuitry threaded beneath the skin. Synthetic nerves flickered with erratic pulses. Rowan approached the body with an expression forged from duty rather than shock. "What are we looking at?" Sarah answered, "Modified neural lattice. Self-contained weapon system. The kind banned under 11 treaties." Orin climbed down, boots striking each rung with quiet certainty. When he reached the deck, he approached the group and stopped at a measured distance. This wasn't a lone contract killer. This is custom work. Someone invested heavily. Rowan turned. "You're certain of that?" No individual would risk using a prototype like this unless backed by people who could shield them. This took planning, resources, and a clear motive. One of the council stewards approached, shaking with agitation. Their translucent skin rippled with shifting colors. "You assured us human oversight would reduce volatility. Instead." Orin cut in calmly. "You're welcome." The steward recoiled. "Excuse me? You wanted Earth removed. Someone else wanted it removed immediately. Without that shot, every species in this room would have blamed each other. You'd be negotiating through chaos." Another steward stepped forward, more composed. "Explain, human." Orin gestured toward the assassin. Their weapon would have hit the speaker. The blast type would have matched several rival groups here. The council would fracture within the hour. Whoever hired them wanted the entire political structure to collapse around Earth's involvement. Rowan nodded reluctantly. He's right. This wasn't just aimed at Earth. The target was the council's stability. The first steward's anger softened into unease. "Then we owe you." "Stability," Orin interrupted. "Not gratitude. Just clarity." Sarah approached him quietly as the stewards retreated. "You didn't need to antagonize them. Someone has to be direct." She sighed, low and tired. "That could cost us allies. We never had those allies." He studied her expression. "What's wrong?" She hesitated. "You don't understand how much weight your shot carries. The entire chamber saw what you did. They saw how far a human could reach without being seen. For some, that's protection. For others, it's proof of their fears." Orin shook his head. "They feared us before tonight. Now they fear whoever sent this thing." Sarah lowered her voice. "And if those factions are powerful enough to slip an artificial assassin into the council floor, they won't stop." Rowan joined them with the assassin's data module in hand. "The tech embedded in this thing isn't from any known species. Or at least, none willing to admit it." Orin frowned. "Meaning?" "It means," Rowan replied, "they're using black trade robotics. The kind you only find in places that don't acknowledge laws. Someone outside the council network wants war." Orin looked back down at the body wires twitching beneath half-scorched skin. A faint tick echoed as circuits shorted out. The assassin wasn't any single species. Its features suggested hybridization engineered for obedience rather than identity. Sarah leaned in. "We need intel from whoever created them." Orin answered, "We need the people who hired them." Rowan said, "We need the council alive long enough to find either." He checked his wrist display and grimaced. "Delegates are demanding a statement. Some are insisting Earth take responsibility for all security oversight tonight." Orin stiffened. "They blame us for stopping an attack on them. They blame whoever's easiest to accuse." Sarah crossed her arms. "Then we need evidence before rumors take root." Rowan motioned to the assassin. "I'll take the body to our analysts. You two meet me in the intel wing in 1 hour." He left with a security team, the drones floating behind him. As the chamber emptied, Sarah remained beside Orin, her voice quieter. "You did the right thing. Right things don't always help, he replied. They help someone. Orin studied the chamber again. The lights dimmed to standby mode, leaving soft reflections dancing across the polished floor. Delegates' voices lingered faintly in the distance, a blend of worry and calculation. Everything felt paused, caught between danger and opportunity. Sarah stepped closer. Tell me what's in your head. He hesitated. Then, the shot wasn't the hard part. She looked at him with concern. What was? Knowing it won't be the last. The intel wing sat buried deep in the station, secured by multiple identity scans and reinforced walls. Orin and Sarah arrived before Rowan, which gave them a moment to study the holographic displays flickering across the room. Maps of known black trade routes rotated in slow arcs. Ship silhouettes tagged with blinking red markers floated above data feeds. Orin examined one series of symbols etched into the assassin's recovered schematics. These markings aren't from any recognized manufacturer. Sarah zoomed in. They look like coordinate shards. Fragmented nav coding? Orin asked. She adjusted the filters, revealing a layered pattern. Yes. Someone built the assassin using pieces of navigation data. But why embed coordinates into its body? So it could be tracked, Orin muttered. Or so it could return after the job. Rowan entered with a set of encrypted files. I have preliminary results. Orin straightened. Tell me you found something useful. I found enough to worry anyone. Rowan placed the files on the table. The power core inside that thing wasn't standard. It was tuned to detonate on remote override. Someone could have erased all evidence if you hadn't hit the coil precisely. Sarah raised an eyebrow. So Orin didn't just stop the attack. He prevented a cover-up. Rowan nodded. We're dealing with someone clever. They wanted the council deadlocked, not enlightened. Orin asked, do we know where the components originated? Rowan tapped the files. The holodisplay shifted to a star map with a region highlighted in deep red. Outer Verge. No regulation. No jurisdiction. If a conspiracy wanted to avoid detection, they'd build everything there. Orin studied the map with a cold, measured focus. Then that's where we go next. Rowan blinked. Excuse me? You're not suggesting fieldwork, Sarah began. I am, Orin said firmly. If we wait for another attack, the next contractor may not fail. Our only chance is to reach the source before they send something stronger. Rowan hesitated. The council will never approve. They won't need to, Orin said. We aren't going as representatives. We're going because Earth can't afford another shot aimed at the council's throat. Sarah met his gaze. If we go prepared. No assumptions. No missteps. Orin nodded. Agreed. Rowan stared at both of them, realization settling. You two are serious. Completely, Orin said. Rowan exhaled in resignation. Then I'll authorize the mission under covert classification. Orin grabbed the map disk and secured it in his vest. Good. Sarah looked at him with a mix of resolve and apprehension. This won't be like anything we've faced before. Orin stepped toward the exit. All the better. He paused at the doorway, glancing back at them. They underestimated humans once, he said. We'll make sure they regret doing it again. If you want, I can now create. Sparkle's an epilogue. Sparkle's a sequel outline. Sparkle's character sheets. Sparkles or rewrite any chapter in a different tone.